Hey guys, I am Shav with Polygon Gaming, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about Terran versus Zerg build orders. Everyone knows it, loves it, fears it, hates it. It's 2-on-1. And when you're a Zerg player, some of these build orders of the other races, quite frankly, make no goddamn sense. I mean, come on, really. Who cares about 2 reactors and 2 tech labs? Or 5 reactors and 2 tech labs? And why the fuck is the former more aggressive than the latter? Let's make Terran make sense. If you're a Terran, you could learn a lot from this video, but if you're a Zerg, you're learning a brand new language. First, though, let's take a trip in my hot tub time machine down memory lane to, I don't know, about 2 years ago? Tasia and others popularized a new form of the 1-1-1. This pushes Reaper and Hellion much harder than the standard bio shenanigans of yesteryear. But why? Why was Reaper Hellion good? The Reaper forced the Zerg to be a bit defensive, and the Hellions pressured the front of the Zerg to contain creep. The Hellions could also threaten a run-by at any time, and kept the Zerg on his toes. This was the meta for many years, but then 2-on-1 came along. Almost all 2-on-1 builds are similar until around 3 minutes, though some skip a Reaper, others don't. The big difference is when compared to a 1-1-1. 1-1-1, obviously, it's down in barracks, but the big important part of this is the fact that there's an extra tech lab for the 2-1-1. This creates an opportunity where the Terran is able to get a much faster stim pack, sometimes as early as 4 minutes sooner. And when you really think about the history of Terran versus Zerg, initially it was about getting more Marines faster and going to kill your opponent. Pretty much, pull the boys, every barracks rush with bunker rush, proxy barracks, all those things. Pretty much all revolve around getting your Marines out faster. The Reaper Hellion strategy, though, was a little bit different, and it wasn't about the Marines at all, not until around 7 minutes. Up until then, though, it was about getting better units out. It was about getting more different utility. So, when we're talking in this video about tech, I want to make a distinction. When I say tech, I'm talking about different units, different utility. So the difference in a tank and a liberator and a widow mine. When I talk about upgrades, that's about better units, or stim pack, combat shield, +1 infantry weapons, that sort of thing. 1-1-1 is about getting the Reaper and the Hellion out and just containing your opponent while setting up a good infrastructure, getting your economy, getting your production up quickly. Whereas the 2-on-1 is about hurting your opponent, minimizing the amount of drones that he can make, and really controlling the game from about 5 minutes to about 10 minutes. You leave him alone for the first 5, you take over the next 5. You have to have map control. Now, a lot of the times the 2-on-1 looks like basically 16 Marines in a medevacs going to your opponent, doing a drop, and then bouncing around, cleaning it up until your opponent pushes you back. However, the best forms of 2-on-1, in my personal opinion, are also the ones that require the highest commitment. Those are the more all-any builds. Those builds go for a faster gas, lower worker count in order to get what's called a pivot unit. That's a widow mine or a tank or something along those lines that allow the Terran, maybe not in the first wave, but at least by the second drop, to have something to retreat to. Because in that first drop, you're basically going to be pushed back as far as the Zerg wants to. However, he has to constantly be pushing you back because he's got no ability to contend with medevacs. When you're looking at the second drop, he still doesn't have that much ability to contend with medevacs, but if you're retreating and you have a huge army of lings, or maybe even roaches and ravagers, or whatever, and it's retreating into fire of a tank, well, the moment that it reaches the range of that pivot unit, his units have to go back. You now have a point, a rendezvous point, where your retreat stops, and that is so essential. Terran is so good at controlling territory. When you go for pure Marine, you give that up until you get the pivot units. But what we want to look at is the fact that all these 2-on-1 builds have different ways of being employed, and more importantly, used with varying degrees of success. These 3 builds that we're going to go through are probably 3 of the best benchmarks of the 3 major types, and their pros, their weaknesses, everything about them. There's the light harassment into a macro game. There's the containment into a macro game. And then there's the all-out 2-in-1 all-ins. So the first build I want to show you guys is actually the all-in variation of the 2-in-1. I figure why not show you what is, in my opinion, the best and most successful build that really capitalizes on what 2-in-1 is all about. That is a huge amount of damage right in the middle of the game, not too early, not too late, very targeted, and, you know, yeah, it can go into a macro game, but that attack has to do damage. I really feel like this is the essence of 2-in-1 that Zerg need to understand, because when you're a Zerg player, especially at lower levels, every Terran 2-in-1 feels like this. You think, oh, it just feels like everything's being thrown at you and there's no stop. And honestly, all the builds look so similar that you don't know when to scout. You don't know what you're scouting. So the very moment that I think is most interesting, because, you know, up to 3 minutes, it looks exactly the same for 2-in-1. When it gets most interesting is between 3 and 5 minutes, but as it approaches 5 minutes, like, that's the key moment. So what we're going to see here is that our player Snow from Psystorm is going to basically just throw an Overlord in here. And of course, you can already tell that Yuma is not a big fan of this idea. Now, we even have a commitment here to Overlord speed. Now, forgive me, guys, the user interface not working on these old replays, but there is a reason I chose this replay. Anyways, what does the Overlord see? We've got a lot of Marines, clearly a 2-in-1. There's the Tech Lab, clearly working on STEM. There's a Reactor, Medivacs. He's got the structure. He already knew it was 2-in-1 to some degree. This, from what the Zerg knows and what the Zerg can see, looks like any other possible 2-in-1. And this is what makes 2-in-1 so damn tricky. At 4.5 minutes, what should be different about a 2-in-1 build and a 1-in-1 build? Or any of the other 2-in-1 builds? Let's take a look. The only real difference between 4 and 5 minutes with this 2-in-1 tech all-in build, comparing it to the 2-in-1 builds, is an extra gas. This extra gas is going to play a huge role. It's not just an extra gas, but for right now, this is the only real tell of what the Terran's doing. The only other alternative is to count SEVs, and there's just not enough information to do that. You'd much, much rather just look at the refineries, because if you can see the mineral lines to count the SEVs, you can also just look at the gas. Between 4 and 5 minutes, your main priority should be checking these gas. Now, I said it's not just another gas. Let's talk about that a little bit. There's a model that I call the Triforce model. Looks like a Triforce. 3 triangles stacked on top of each other. This model is useful. In a game of StarCraft, if you try to do everything, you're going to do nothing well. And if you fall into that trap, you're going to lose a lot of your games, because StarCraft's about advantages. And you may trade one advantage and get a disadvantage along with it, but it is a game of taking your advantages and mitigating your disadvantages. So not taking any risks, not taking any advantages, really just puts you in this lukewarm position where you're kind of going to die. You have 3 things you can invest in: army, economy, technology. You need to prioritize those. And basically, you can look at it minute by minute. What are you prioritizing right now? In this particular 2-in-1, like any 2-in-1, not just this one, around 4 minutes or so, going into 5 minutes, you're getting more of an army. You're getting technology in the form of upgrades. Remember, we're making that distinction. So this is actually upgrades, not tech. Stem pack, combat shields, infantry upgrades, that sort of thing. But right now, just the stem pack's important. Really, the economy's kind of weak, especially on this particular version. This particular version not only is getting really strong tech, they're following it up with a really strong army. Well, after ignoring economy for so long, that's what makes this an all-in. It's not that, oh, the whole overall strategy, ignored economy, which it did, but moment by moment. And that's going to be really key in understanding how and the way 2-in-1 works. So with this Overlord being chased out of the Terran base, the Zerg has lost a lot of map control. He's got his side of the map, but he can't poke in here. He's lost the ability to scout. What I like about this particular choice by Yuma is that he's not overextending these Marines. A lot of times people would really just kind of sacrifice these Marines by throwing them directly into the main. Here at 6 minutes, we've got tanks on the field. We've got 1 tank, we've got 1 Liberator, we've got another tank just starting. The tanks start around 5 minutes. And this is way earlier than any of the other builds, even faster than the 1-in-1. Yes, 1-in-1 could get tanks, but they don't. not at that stage. So this is really one of the fastest ways of getting tanks out on the field, and one of the most aggressive ways of throwing them at your opponent. And again, more light harassment, keeping the Marines active on the map. It's all about fighting the Zerg at every opportunity from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. And again, trading Marines, that's no problemo. He's actually getting quite a few Queen kills. Queen's not that great against stemmed Marines, in fact, without the benefit of Transfuse. So killing all some of these Queens got a buff recently. This is definitely a reply to that buff. Now we are approaching 7 minutes at this point, and we've had 10 drones killed, but the Zerg is still floating around 48 workers, so have not produced that many extra army units. He's produced what he needed, repelled the attack, and he's done fine. If you're at 48 workers and your opponent's at 38 and you've got this many bases ahead of your opponent, you're fine. And if you happen to lose 10 workers, you would have been at 58. So he's lost 10 workers, he's still got 48, which makes him basically 20 workers ahead of his opponent. The Terran, though, now has the 3 refineries. He's got 4 barracks, and he's not thinking about a 3rd base. There's nothing even closely remotely to it. And the more important thing is he's not making more add-ons. Initially, when you think of reactors, yes, it helps you make more units, but it also takes a huge investment in terms of time. So if you're going to do an early attack, which 2-on-1 by definition is, the sooner you get add-ons, like more add-ons, the less all-in you are. And that's so weird. It's so different than the way I always thought about Terran. So keep an eye on from 5 to 7 minutes. Go back, check a look. Is your opponent investing in more infrastructure, more reactors, more tech labs, engineering base, anything along those lines? Is he continuing to make SCVs? Any of that scouting information would have protected Snow in this situation. But he's not able to get that information, despite being in a wonderful position right now. Like, really, look around. 4 bases, insane creep spread. This 4th base about halfway done. His opponent stuck on 2 bases, and there's not even a hint of a 3rd base. First thing the Terran does, take the Zelnaga Tower. Let's talk a little bit about the way Terran holds the map. He's taken the center location, and let's just say he parks his pivot here. He's not, but let's just say he did. First, you got the Zelnaga, so you can see a lot of attacks coming, any kind of wraparounds, definitely something a Terran wants to be aware of. More importantly, though, placing his units here, he can use 1 or 2 of these medevacs to send drops off to the side. But that move is a containment. We've already covered the fact that this Terran is so balls in, he's got to do a lot of damage. So this move right here, just parking it wouldn't work. He makes the right decision going for the kill. So guys, in your own game, look at it. Is he containing you, or is he trying to kill you? Make your decisions from there. Terran, buddies, cleaning creep is huge. It's a huge defensive boost to the Zerg. So if you're not dropping a scan, there's got to be a reason why. And honestly, the reason is he just doesn't care. Look at all these tanks parked back here. Remember we talked about a pivot unit? The idea is these first 4 or 5 Marines are what's really going to do the most damage. He uses these as scouting units. These are reinforcement Marines, and these are reinforcement tanks. This is what's killing the Overlord. This is what's going to kill any Queens, and only when he feels like these are outnumbered will he bring in new Marine. However, if those would not be enough, that's when he begins the retreat path. And this is really important to understand this battle that's about to happen. So there's the Lings swinging on in here, right into these reinforcement Marines, and with the reinforcement Marines out of the way, hiding behind some good old line of sight blockers, the Lings force back up. Now the Banelings are the obvious answer. Okay, this many Marines gonna go for Banelings, no doubt. So the second wave of Marines knocked back the Lings, but the second wave of Marines would not knock back the Banelings. That's what the tanks are for. That's why this is called a pivot unit. You literally use this as a positional pivot, and then just use small numbers of these Marines, as you're seeing here, to run forward. He's never running forward with the whole group, just a small group. Now that's a fairly larger group, but it's okay. And here we go, some good splits, the Banelings coming in, but most importantly, here's the tanks. The tanks are what make this such an easy battle for the Terran. Oh my god, look at that. That is so brutal, guys. Tankovac is supposed to be taken out, if it's not already, depending on when you're watching this. So this is a strategy with a limited lifespan. However, Widow Mines definitely still going to be usable for the same concept, and I'm sure that people are still going to try and make this work even if tanks can't be lifted. But really, the important part here is that this is pretty much non-stop action from 5 minutes on. That's what the Terran wants. That's what allows him to swing back into the game. We see the third base now started for the Terran. He's getting his armory. He's ready to transition to a late game if he doesn't kill his opponent. But he might just kill his opponent. These drones pulled off a line. Really strong attack. All coming back to the siege tank line. We could tell that this was a killing blow by a number of factors. Most importantly, he didn't try to kill the creep. Just would have taken too long. He did pause to kill some overlords. He didn't try to throw his first medevac down the throat. He just did some light harassment. So there's a lot of little things that will tell you whether your opponent's all in. And they're actually antithetical to what you would have thought. Normally, if my opponent throws 2 medevacs in my main at 5 minutes, of course I'm going to think he's all in, but the all in doesn't come till later. Great positional play here with the Liberator, with the tanks. You guys seeing how pretty much a textbook Terran would do this sort of thing. And honestly, how to beat this is really just scout it early, respond appropriately, and realize that maybe you don't have to make that many drones. Maybe you don't have to take that extra base. Maybe you just have to recognize that your opponent is doing the all-in variation and has no way out. Actually, transitioning out of 2-1-1 is ridiculously hard if you haven't done a lot of damage. Oh yeah! Future Shaft here. If I'm in the future and I recorded this in my past and you're watching this in my future, how does that work?
Heisenberg's entangled quantum cat.
Thank you, Robot. I had a lot to say on this topic. I've got it for an hour and a half of just me rambling about 2-1-1 and all these different builds. So rather than try to edit that together and put it all together and make you guys wait another 3 weeks or so, because that's how long I've been working on this video, I decided I'm going to do a 2-parter. I know that's a little unusual for me. Forgive me. I hope you guys are okay with that. But the goal here is to go ahead and get this out because the patch just released. I'm not even sure if tank back's a thing anymore. And just a lot is going on. There's a brand new ladder season. So I want to get this information out there as soon as possible. What I need from you guys, because this could be a 2-parter, this could be a 3-parter. Like and subscribe to this video. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see parts number 3. I'm going to have part number 2 out Friday. Next Friday, I'm going to start doing a release schedule. Fridays at 8 a.m. Eastern. You guys can expect a brand new video from me. It won't always be a crash course, but it will be something. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Share this with your friends. Tell every Terran, every Zerg you know about this video and help the matchup grow. Let me know in the comments below what topics you would like to see, if you thought this video was helpful, or if you just want to tell me you don't like my hair. Either way, guys, I love and appreciate your feedback. I do this for you guys. Expect more regular updates here in the very near future. If you want to know more about 2-1-1, click the video on the left to see Polygon Invitational number 4, where Masa takes on TLO using this strategy in every single game. Or check out the video on the right where we interview Masa about 2-1-1, what he thinks about it, and where he thinks the future of esports is going. Wait, what the fuck is a robot doing in my room?